It was the fourth day of 2015, right in the heart of what many call the safest capital on Earth, London. But deep underground, something wild was going down. A mysterious crew was trying to break into a hidden vault. Now hold up. This wasn't just any vault. This place held gold, diamonds, and secrets. Deep, dangerous secrets belonging to some of the richest people in Britain. The security, next level. Thermal and standard cameras, motion sensors, advanced alarms, high-tech systems that made this place feel more like a fortress, just buried underground. And yet, in the blink of an eye, it was wide open. Here's the crazy part. The crew actually made it inside. But the real question, could they make it out? Was this whole thing just a calculated suicide mission? And the biggest shock? The identity of the mastermind behind it all. This wasn't your average heist. And the people behind it? Not some young punks or small-time crooks. Nah, these were seasoned vets. Literally senior citizens in the world of crime. We're talking old-school gangsters, men in their 50s and 60s, but with minds as sharp as ever. And when we say the grandpas of theft, we're not even joking. Genius-level planning, decades of experience, and nerves of steel all came together that night. Now imagine this. They walked into one of the most secure places in Britain, and not a single shot was fired. So, how'd they do it? How did they pull it off? And who were these guys? That's where the story begins. Right in the heart of London's Diamond District, a neighborhood sparkling with gold and gems on every corner. Over 300 jewelry shops, lined up one after another. This area sees close to £3 million changing hands every single day. The visitors? Diamond dealers, bank owners, old money families that have been doing business here since World War II. Beneath this glittering neighborhood sits one of Britain's oldest and most secure vaults. Built back in the 1940s, this underground giant was updated with cutting-edge security systems. Inside? 999 safety deposit boxes, each one stuffed with treasure, secrets, and things worth more than money. Diamonds, gold, rare watches you'd only see in world-class auctions. This place, it was like a hidden city under the streets, protected by cameras covering every inch, with alarms sensitive enough to detect a mosquito flying by. And the walls? Reinforced concrete half a meter thick. The main door? A steel beast weighing over 2 tons, blast-proof. Hooked into the police system, loaded with HD cameras and vibration sensors that could pick up the tiniest tremor. With that level of security, just thinking about breaking in was a fantasy. Anyone even near that vault? Jail time, guaranteed. But, as you're about to find out, someone didn't just think about it. They actually did it. And what followed became one of the most brilliant and complex heists in British history. Now that we've seen the fortress that is Hatton Garden and the secrets it holds, it's time to ask, who were the madmen crazy enough to even think about robbing this underground stronghold in the heart of London? Who had the guts, and more importantly, the skills, to even get close? The answer: these guys weren't just thieves. They were men who pushed past the limits of fear and had something even more valuable than money: experience. The mastermind? A man named Hugh Doyle, known on the street as the Brain. His past? Loaded with convictions, robbery, murder, and even a stint in the police force before being cleared of the charges. This guy was a genius planner. No vault too secure for him to map out. And just like the professor in La Casa de Papel, he handpicked his crew with precision. The second member, Terry Perkins, 67 years old. Nickname? the king of conditions. Diabetic, heart problems, visibly frail, but don't let the looks fool you. This man was a lock-picking legend, a mastermind in his own right. And yeah, he still packed a punch in hand-to-hand combat. His name would soon become tied to one of the biggest heists in UK history. Then we've got John Collins, 74, known as the godfather of getaways. He'd been in the game since the 60s, specializing in armored car robberies. His role? The driver, the lookout, the eyes and ears on the street. Next up, Danny Jones, age 60. They called him the Tank. His past? Full of armed jobs. He was the type to walk into a bank with a gun and walk out with a fortune. Fearless, no hesitation, all action. Then there was Carl Wood, 58. Nickname? The Fox. Multiple-time offender, skilled escape artist, had broken out of prison more than once using elaborate methods. His job? Fast missions, quick action. And if the plan failed, he was the getaway solution. And finally, Basil, age 62. Nickname? The Ghost. A tech wizard. Nobody even knows what he really looks like to this day. His role was critical. Shutting down the alarms, taking control of the vault's entire tech system. He held the magic phrase, "Everything's silent." These guys were more than just old men. They were legends of the game. Old in age, sure, but masters in the art of crime. But what was the real motivation behind all this? Enter Brian Reeder, a seasoned criminal with a fortune estimated at over £15 million. Even though he spent half his life behind bars, his lifestyle? Luxury. He wanted for nothing. Still, Brian felt time slipping away. He wanted one last score, one that would make his name echo through history. He once said, "Before the plan, I felt old, weak. But the second the idea hit me, I felt 20 again." But he needed a crew, not just any crew. He needed pros, lifers, men who knew the game. The first man he thought of? His old friend Terry Perkins, the godfather of high-stakes theft. Thing is, they had a deal, a pact to never talk again. Because if they did, it meant a job was brewing. And that meant eyes and ears from law enforcement right away. Still, Brian broke the rule. He went to Terry's house. Terry opened the door and asked, "What the hell are you doing here?" Brian walked in without a word, sat down and said, "I need you for this." He pitched the idea, the heist. But Terry said no, straight up. "I'm sick, I'm tired, I'm not spending the rest of my life in prison." They talked for half an hour. Brian finally stood up, left a piece of paper on the table with his phone number. "If you change your mind, call me." 2 days later, the phone rang. "Terry, where do we meet?" They met at a cafe in East London. Brian came in with the full plan, written down. But Terry, he tossed it. "We need a whole new one, from scratch." So they started planning. For 2 months, they met quietly in Terry's garage, out of sight. When the plan was ready, they started pulling the crew together, just like the professor. But here's the twist. The hardest part wasn't the planning. It was convincing these retired legends to get involved again. Brian and Terry didn't know low-level thugs, and guys their age, most had retired, rich, comfortable, done with the game. But what happened was wild. Every single one of them said yes, not for the money, but for the thrill. Honestly, what happened next was pure madness. This wasn't the 1950s. This was 2015, an era ruled by advanced security systems and digital surveillance. And still, they all said yes. Collins took charge of the car and surveillance. Jones and Wood handled the break-in, with Wood also managing the getaway plan. And finally, Basil, his role was critical. Disable the alarm systems and keep them out of sight. But what we didn't mention earlier is that the 2 months of planning between Brian and Terry was just the beginning. The real training? It lasted 3 whole years. From 2012 to 2015, the team rehearsed the heist through staged robberies in rented countryside homes. They'd drill through walls, break in, shut off alarms, clean up, and make clean escapes. And once done, they'd patch up everything and hand the house back looking untouched. Brian described those years as the best 3 years of my life. I was training for stuff guys half my age couldn't do, and nailing it. The real thrill, facing something way bigger than you, and still winning. Then came the real deal. They picked the perfect time, Easter weekend. That's when stores close, and Hatton Garden shuts down for 3 full days. This gave the crew a golden window if the escape took longer than planned. Every move was calculated. On April 2nd, 2015, at exactly 8 p.m., a white van pulled up quietly outside the company's building. The street was still. Shops were shut. Only the security cameras kept watch. 2 men stepped out of the van, wearing high-vis vests and medical masks. Nothing suspicious. Just looked like your average repair crew. Their job? Simple. Scout the area. Watch. Observe. Once done, they returned to the van. Then came phase 2. How do you break into the building? That's where Basil stepped in. The tech genius. Using his custom tools, he discovered the company's lock system was wired into an electronic circuit. That meant if he could tap into that system, he could send a controlled electric pulse and pop the front or back door open. The twist? The control box for that circuit wasn't inside the building. It was located in a side alley, quiet, discreet, but heavily watched by cameras. Now Basil couldn't just disable the cameras. He had to freeze the image feed, make it look like they were still running normally, when in reality, they were showing a single, static frame. And guess what? He did it. He hacked the system, pulled up the live feeds, then, over his radio, said, "Walk in front of the camera, let's test it." The ghost, Basil, stepped into frame, face covered, black bag in hand. First attempt, the camera caught him. Second time, still caught. Third try, bingo, image frozen, cameras blind. Then, over the radio, front doors open. He slipped in silently. Everything was going exactly as planned, but they needed the back door open too, just in case something went south or they had to bail. This one? Much trickier. Basil worked on it relentlessly, and after a full hour, he cracked it. The van moved again, quietly rolling to the back entrance. 2 men stepped out, dressed like maintenance workers, and walked right into the building. Now, 3 members of the crew were inside Hatton Garden. The next phase of the operation was about to begin. Once everyone was inside, Collins, the driver, moved to the next stage of his plan. He drove the van to a spot a few blocks away, parked it quietly, then walked back toward the building. But not to join the break-in. His job was surveillance. You see, the crew had rented a small apartment directly across from the building. There, behind a curtain, Collins sat by the window, eyes locked on the street below. Radio in hand, ready to alert the team if anything looked off. Back inside, Basil slipped in through the back door. His tech job wasn't done yet. Now there were 4 men inside the building, and 1 watching from the outside. The 3 upstairs made their way to the 2nd floor. When they got there, they called for the elevator. As soon as it arrived, they held the door open, intentionally jamming it. That kept the lift stuck at the top floor, out of the way. Meanwhile, on the ground floor, Basil and Brian were at work. Using metal tools, they pried open the elevator shaft doors, then lowered themselves down into the shaft on a long rope. Simple fact: if that elevator moved while they were down there, it would have crushed them. So it had to stay frozen in place. Once at the bottom, they crawled through a narrow service door, and suddenly, they were there. Inside the core of the system, the building's control center. This room was everything: thermal cameras, motion detectors, infrared sensors. All of it was connected here. And this was Basil's moment. For 45 minutes, he worked each system one by one, carefully, quietly, until finally he managed to shut everything down. Almost. There was one final test: the door. Despite all he'd done, Basil couldn't be sure the alarm systems were completely dead. There was only one way to find out: open the door. If nothing happened, great. But if the alarm triggered, they'd have 2 minutes, just 2, before the cameras came back online, and a silent alert got sent straight to the police, which would mean game over. The building would be surrounded in minutes. But then, the door opened. No alarms, no flashing lights, nothing. Basil had done it. He radioed the team upstairs. They came down to join him. With the security system down, every electronic door in the building unlocked automatically. And that was it. Phase 2 was officially underway. Now inside the basement, they were getting closer to the prize. But there was one big problem. The vault wasn't unguarded. While the outer systems were disabled, some of the internal systems were still live. As they crept deeper into the basement, they reached the vault room and found themselves face to face with a massive steel gate, not connected to the building's electric controls. It was shut tight, surrounded by thick steel bars, like something out of a fortress. There was only one way in: cut through the bottom of the door using a power saw. It took them 35 grueling minutes to carve a narrow opening just wide enough to crawl through. But right then, disaster nearly struck. When Basil left the control room earlier, the system had quietly logged a breach and triggered a silent internal alert. Security guards stationed nearby responded immediately. They started moving toward the front entrance of the building. Collins, watching from the window, saw them approaching. He grabbed his radio to warn the team, but the signal had cut out. He sat there, frozen, watching the guards right outside the building, unable to say a word. Inside, he knew the crew was cutting through steel. The noise alone could blow the entire operation. He was terrified. In his words, "At that moment, I thought of running. I was sure they'd all be caught. The guards stood outside for 10 whole minutes, but they left just 3 minutes before the others started sawing." 3 minutes. That's all that separated success from total disaster. Once the guards left, the radio came back online. Collins checked in. "What's going on down there?" Brian responded, "We're cutting through a steel gate in front of us." Collins didn't mention what had just happened. No need to spook the team. The danger had passed. For now. Collins, sitting in the lookout apartment, thought the crew had finally reached the main vault. He was thrilled, completely unaware that his teammates were still stuck behind the very first steel door. After crawling through the opening they'd cut, they came face to face with the impossible gate. A massive steel door weighing over 2 tons. A door that couldn't be opened. Not with electricity, not with tech. Just unbreakable. Brian stood there, staring at it, weighing 2 insane options. Option 1, melt the door using acid. But it would take over 300 liters, enough to fill a fuel truck, and days to eat through the metal. Option 2, drill through the concrete wall beside it, half a meter thick. So, they started drilling. 3 straight hours of back-breaking work, only to hit a metal wall. Turns out the vaults were right behind it. They'd just gone in a circle, around the vault, not into it. Defeated, they slumped to the floor. 6 hours passed. They brainstormed. Nothing worked. At that point, it was over. Everything had gone perfectly. The breach, the system shut down, the entry, the timing. But now, in front of them, stood a gate that might as well have been bolted to a nuclear missile. Steel on one side, concrete on the other. And so, they made the call. Abort. Before leaving, Basil turned the entire system back on, like nothing ever happened. But was that the end? Not even close. Remember what I said earlier? The real heist happened on April 4th. Everything you've heard so far, that was all on April 2nd. Which means this wasn't the real operation. After pulling out, Brian had a total mental breakdown. He even suffered a minor heart attack, but survived. He couldn't believe it. Months of planning, gone because of one door. He decided to walk away completely. Told the crew, "If you want to finish it, it's all yours. But me, I'm done." But Terry, his partner in planning, wasn't giving up. He was determined to finish what they started, even if it meant walking straight into a disaster. Then came the big night. April 4th, 2015, 9 p.m. The 4 remaining members got into their white van and rolled down Hatton Garden Street. The street was dead quiet. Every store closed, holiday still in full swing. They circled the block 70 times, checking every window, every corner, making sure it was perfect. And then they went for it. Basil shut down the surveillance system. They opened the back door, then the front, and slipped inside once again. Collins took his post in the apartment. Everything looked exactly the same. Except for one thing. A faint light was glowing inside the vault basement. Did that mean someone was in there? A staff member? A guard? Or did they just leave something running by mistake? Tension skyrocketed. The group agreed. We pull out, again. But Terry refused. "This is our last shot," he said. "We're right there, no turning back." He reminded them of movie heroes. The ones who ask God for a sign, then ignore every single one. The alarms, the lights, the hesitation, the failed attempts. They were all signs. But Terry didn't care. He convinced the rest, except for Wood, who bailed. Now the team was down to 4. Terry, the mastermind, Basil, the tech guy, Collins, the lookout, and Jones, a.k.a. the muscle. This time, they had a new plan. They brought in a hydraulic jack. The goal? Push the vault away from the wall. If they could do it, they'd create a gap, just big enough to crawl through. They got to work. The jack pressed harder and harder. The massive vault slowly started to move. It worked. They'd created an opening. But the danger? The jack was like a car jack, meant for changing tires. One slip, and the vault could slam back, crushing anyone inside. It was a death trap. Still, time was running out. And the crew stood there, staring into the dark gap, faced with one final choice. Risk everything, or walk away, for the 3rd time. Jones and Basil crawled inside, while Terry stayed behind, ready to act in case the jack slipped or needed resetting. They had widened the opening a bit more, and then they worked. non-stop, for nearly 5 hours straight. But wait, quick reminder. We're not talking about guys in their 20s here. These were men in their 70s. Can you imagine what they put themselves through? This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about a wild, stubborn desire to relive the glory days. 5 hours of drilling, bending, crawling. Stuff that would wreck a fit young man. And finally, they made it inside the vault basement. That's when they began breaking open the boxes, one by one. There were 999 deposit boxes inside. Think they got them all? Not even close. The plan was to grab as much as they could carry, but then came the surprise. They only needed 37 boxes. Yes, just 37. Inside those boxes, a treasure haul of gold, diamonds, and rare gems worth 14 million pounds. That's nearly 30 million US dollars, unimaginable wealth, sitting inside what was supposed to be the most secure vault in London. The heist was a success. They got out clean. No one got hurt. No alarms triggered. Before they left, they wiped down every surface with medical-grade alcohol. They even took the security tape backups. Not a single trace left behind. The next 3 days? Total silence. Until April 7th, 2015. The holiday ended. Employees came back and were greeted by chaos. The basement vault was destroyed, boxes smashed open, and the company's most prized assets? Gone. In a flash, the story exploded across the UK. Every major news outlet ran it non-stop. TV anchors, analysts, even psychologists were baffled. Everyone asked the same question. Who were these people? Are they even human? Or demons from another world? Even broadcasters on national television said, these robbers must have had supernatural abilities. Because the cameras didn't catch a single clear movement. While the public stood in awe, the British economy wobbled. Markets dropped. People rushed to banks in panic. The fear was real. Hatton Garden, a company that had stood for 75 years, got wiped out just like that. Then no one was safe. Pressure reached a boiling point. The authorities had no leads, so they faked an announcement. We caught the suspects, just to calm the panic. But in reality, the police had nothing. The case had hit a dead end. That's when detectives decided to play their last card. They went back to the city's street surveillance network, and suddenly, they got something. One video showed a car heading toward the crime scene, but as they followed its trail using other cameras, the car vanished. That's when they realized the surveillance system had been hacked. From that point on, the investigation shifted completely. Detectives began carefully reviewing every camera feed in the area, and then they found the shot. 2 men in disguise, one of them bald, carrying a black duffel bag, and more importantly, on April 4th, the night of the heist, the footage caught a white van circling Hatton Garden multiple times. But it wasn't alone. There was also a white Mercedes, making the exact same rounds. 2 vehicles, one belonging to the gang. The other? A complete mystery. Was it another lookout? A backup crew? Or a third party watching in silence? No one knew. But that mystery car was the first loose thread in a much deeper story. After intense investigations and thorough analysis, detectives discovered that the white van had been purchased under a fake name, used for the job, then disposed of like it never existed. But one question remained. Who owned the second car? That's when the twist hit. The man who backed out at the last minute. Brian couldn't help himself. Despite walking away, he was too curious to stay out. So he watched the scene from afar as it all unfolded. That single act would mark the beginning of the gang's downfall. Now you'd expect police to storm in and arrest him, right? Wrong. They watched him silently for an entire month. Brian didn't make a single wrong move. No shady calls, no secret meetings, no strange behavior. But they never forgot his past. A 76-year-old man with a criminal record as thick as a novel, he couldn't be ruled out. So surveillance continued until everything changed. May 3rd, 2015. Brian called Terry and asked to meet. They chose a small cafe in East London. The police set up a full-scale sting. Undercover agents, hidden mics, cameras in every corner. The two men met, sat at the bar, and whispered quietly. But even whispers weren't safe. Detectives used lip-reading experts to catch every single word. Brian wanted his share. Terry snapped back. "You backed out. Said you didn't want a penny. Now you're asking for a cut?" The argument escalated, but nothing came of it. Not yet. Still, the cops now knew two things for sure. Brian had dropped out, but later came crawling back for a slice. And Terry? He went through with the heist, with his own crew. That's when police zoomed in on Terry and quickly pieced together the full team: Wood, Perkins, Jones, Terry, Brian, 5 key players. Then came the shocker. Under pressure from Brian, Terry finally agreed to a last meeting with the whole crew. A risky move that broke their original deal. Never meet again after the job. But tensions were boiling. Terry wanted to avoid bloodshed, so he offered Brian a small cut, out of respect for his role in planning. July 15th, 2015. They gathered in an abandoned house to settle it once and for all. Suddenly, boom! Police raided the building. They arrested everyone, except for one man, Basil. Why? Because Basil refused to attend. He told them, "Do what you want, but I won't break the code. I'm not meeting anyone." Turns out, he was the smartest one in the crew. Even after all others were caught, no one gave up his name. No ID, no photo, no trace. He became a living ghost. And yet, 3 years later, after a secret manhunt, the police finally caught him. But here's the wildest part. To this day, his identity has never been made public. And rumor has it, he now works for British intelligence. As for the rest, they were sentenced to between 5 and 7 years in prison. But fate had other plans. 3 of them died in jail. The others, still alive today. Their story became a criminal legend, studied in law schools and police academies. Old men in their 70s, pulling off something most young thieves could never dream of. But hey, want to know the real kicker? Terry? He was the same mastermind behind the biggest heist in British history. Yup. And we told his full story in an earlier video on this channel, one that even uncovered royal family secrets. So if you're into real-life stories full of mystery and madness, don't miss the tale of the teenagers who stole hundreds of millions from one of the world's biggest crypto dealers. It's waiting for you right now. And if this story blew your mind, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because we bring you the biggest real stories from the heart of truth, straight to your ears.